That's all I have to say for today. Say it again? Okay. All right, chapter 13, donor selection and phlebotomy. There are gonna be some of these donor questions on your registry and on your final. Not a lot of them on your final, but on your registry, I would expect some. To study for that, what I really recommend is using your purple and yellow book. Because it has a picture of the donor on the, I think it's the very first page. Yeah, so, and it just gives you little funny ways to remember it. So, the FDA established the donor criteria through the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, and then AABB writes the standards, but the FDA has to approve them. So, who's donated blood before? Several of you. So, you know, they give you the paper where you fill out your information, they do your health history, and they do a physical exam. So the registration, they just get the information about the donor, and then they give you some educational materials about what to do if you have an adverse reaction. They interview you with questions that are intended to protect you if you're donating. So you can't donate if you're pregnant or 6 weeks after. If you don't weigh enough, they'll make you get on the scale. They'll check your blood pressure, check your age and age, all that stuff. These reasons for indefinite and permanent deferrals, you just need to look over the, and this one too. So just be familiar with the reasons that they tell you can never donate again and all that stuff. Medications. There are some medications that will make you like a permanent deferral, so forever. Some that are just temporary, so be familiar with those. There are some vaccines that you can't donate if you've had them within a certain time frame, because the live vaccines, they're the ones that matter. So I want you to look over that. This whole chapter is really just memorization. You're just gonna have to be familiar with it. So the H&H, you'll need to know that for the test and probably for your registry. So at least 12.5 for females, 13 for males for the hemoglobin. 38% hematocrit for females, 39 or greater for males. And so it makes it easier for me to see if I write it out. Females, 12.5 and 38. That's how you'll see an H&H written. So they write one. Hematocrit, hemoglobin always comes first. So hemoglobin and hematocrit. Males, 13 and 39. I don't know why they couldn't just make it 12 and 38, 13 and 39 would be easier in my head, but I didn't make the rules. Blood pressure, if you can remember that normal is 120/80. So between 90 and 180, which 180 sounds really high to me, but 90 to 180, 50 to 100. So this is the, the top number. And the bottom. Say that again. Oh. Temperature less than or equal to 37.5. So if you see it on an exam, it's probably gonna be in Fahrenheit, even though we do Celsius for everything in the lab. So 99.5 or lower. Pulse, 50 to 100, that one's easy for me to remember. They have to weigh at least 110 pounds and at least 16 years old or older if the state law is older than 16. And so you need to know, like, this whole chart, technically. Yeah, so some states, they have different rules. So if their rules are anything less or more than 16 from the state, then they may require a parent signature or something like that. I know we did a blood drive here, and they were gonna get, when I was in this program, they were gonna give us extra credit, and I tried to do it, and I didn't weigh enough, and I thought it was so unfair, so I went and tried to do it anyways, and I was like, maybe they'll still give me the points. And I thought it was so unfair that it wasn't my fault that I couldn't get the points. But life's not fair, is it? It's not rude. So you have to identify the patient, the bag has to be labeled, so if you've given blood, you see they come with a sheet of stickers, and they label every little tube, every bag, like all the little stuff. They prep the site with 0.7% iodophor solution, and then the 10% iodine. And they use a 16 gauge needle. So what kind of gauge needle have we been using to draw blood? Like 21, 23, that needle is kind of big. So they say it takes like 8 to 10 minutes to collect 1 unit of blood. And so they use that big needle to hurry up and get it over with, and it's less stress on the red blood cells with the bigger needle. There was a fun fact in the book that I wanted to tell y'all. They say that approximately 36,000 units of red blood cells are needed every day in the U.S. That's a whole lot. They also use 7,000 platelets and 10,000 units of plasma every day in the U.S. And so if donation is all voluntary, I guess you can see why we have a blood shortage. Because if you look at people, the way they treat people now, people don't care about people anymore. And so if people don't donate, then there's just not any blood. So adverse donor reactions, and this just tells you what to do if the reaction happens. And so you'll just get familiar with this if you're working in the donor center. Post-donation care, y'all can go back and read this. No drinking or smoking right after. Drink a bunch of fluids. Autologous donations. And so allogenic is when you get blood from somebody that's not you. So, blood from someone else. Autologous is when you donate to yourself. So the advantages of donating to yourself is prevention of transfusion transmitted diseases. That still does happen. It's not as common as it used to be. Prevention of alloimmunization, so you don't get exposed to other antigens, so you don't make antibodies. Supplements the blood supply, so if you're donating to your own self, then you're not taking blood from somebody else. No febrile or allergic reactions, and the patient feels better about it because it's my blood. We had people, for real, that would call the blood bank and make sure they weren't getting blood from somebody that received the COVID vaccine when that shot came out. And we're like, you're gonna get blood or you're not. So this is your chance to say, I don't want any blood, because I don't know who got the shot, okay? Do you want the blood or no? You don't have to get it. It was getting ridiculous. So, some people do not want to receive a transfusion from somebody else. The disadvantages of autologous donation is inventory control. You have to keep up with it. You have to make sure that nobody else gets it. It can cause a preoperative anemia. So that's why they usually make I think your H&H, your hemoglobin has to be at least 11 to donate to yourself. It costs money, so the patient has to pay for that. There's a high wastage rate, so if they don't use it, you can't give it to somebody else, and it does get wasted. And there's an increased incidence of adverse reactions to the donation. I don't really know why that is. but I didn't see them. When I first started working in the lab, I saw some from some of the orthopedic surgeries, but it had been, when I left, it had been years since I had seen one. So types of autologous donations. So that's when the blood is drawn at a donor center and sent to the lab before the surgery. Usually, you can donate to yourself up to 72 hours before the surgery, if you have a good enough H&H. Normobulemic is when they remove units at the beginning of a surgery and reinfuse them at the end of a surgery. So the person that does that is called a perfusionist. I think they have a doctorate degree. They have to go to school for a long time to be the actual perfusionist. We did do this where I worked, but the blood bank wasn't really involved. We just sent blood if they needed it. And then blood recovery, which is a medical device that's used to wash, filter, and concentrate blood during an operation. So we called it a cell saver, and it literally collects the blood during a surgery, like blood that they would lose, and it washes it and gives it back to the patient, which is really cool to me. I really wanted to see it. I never got to see it in real life. But we did this too in heart surgeries. So preoperative donation criteria. So the high-risk questions don't apply. So if you've been men having sex with men, or if you've been using needles, IV drugs, they will still let you donate to yourself. That blood just can't be used for anybody else. There's no age restriction. If you're less than 110 pounds, then they just adjust how much blood. They'll let you donate less blood to yourself. Hemoglobin has to be 11 or higher, hematocrit 33 or higher. So the rules are a little bit lower if you're donating to your own self. And up to 72 hours prior to surgery, if your H&H is good enough. Directed donations are directed to a specific recipient. So sometimes churches, if they have a sick person at their church, they'll have a blood drive and people will donate to this specific person. There's no evidence that directed donations are safer than allogenic, so just random units. Donors must meet the same criteria as for allogenic donation, so as for blood, that can go to anybody. You can donate blood every 56 days. And so sometimes they can waive that 56 days if the medical director approves it. During an apheresis collection, components are separated and the remaining blood is returned to the donor. And so that's done with leukapheresis, so if they're taking off white blood cells only, granulocytes, and plateletpheresis. So donations are made at least 48 hours apart, no more than twice a week, or up to 24 times a year. And your platelet count has to be at least 150,000 to donate platelets. And so if you remember, the platelet count range is 150 to 450. And so that'll help you remember the minimum platelet count, right? So it has to be at least the bottom of normal limit to be able to donate. So I'm not gonna ask you that, but you may see that on your registry. And so that, it will be, as long as you know the range for platelets, which you do, that'll be easy to remember. And this, like the same thing we talked about, those exchange transfusions yesterday, these pheresis collections, it looks the same way. So they take some of your blood off and pull out, say they pull the platelets off, and they give you your blood and plasma back. So it's the same type of machine. So plasmapheresis, no more than once every 4 weeks. It is considered infrequent. If somebody does it frequently, they'll measure your IgG and IgM levels every 4 months if you do it more than once every 4 weeks. And so that's because your immunoglobulins are in your plasma, right? Your antibodies. And so they'll measure those if you're a frequent donor. Red cell apheresis, so 2 units of red cells may be donated if the height and weight requirements are met. The only people I usually saw donating 2 at one time is men. because their H&H is higher. And you have to wait 16 weeks following a double red is what it's called, so 2 units. So a regular red cell donation, so 1 unit, is 56 days before you can do it again. And 16 weeks if you're given 2 units. This is a picture of that apheresis instrument. You'll see them at the hospital, all the hospitals hold blood drives. And so if you walk over there, just, even if you're not donating blood, see if you can go see how it's set up. If you've never seen one before, you'll get to see one of these machines.